Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the SCB Steelers Podcast presented by DEK Roofing Incorporated of South Florida. Quick shout out to the folks down there. Their season coming to an end, just like ours. Big Dolphins contingent there at the DEK bar, and I know it ended abruptly, as the seasons always do. We are very glad to be part of the Variety Sports Network. And, of course, the show originates from the Bradshaw Bourbon Studio. Cheers to everyone. Scarps, I got to give you credit, dude. You are hanging in there like a freaking trooper. You have not touched a drop of alcohol throughout the month of January, and I can only imagine how excited you are that our show will fall on the first day of February.
I'm just always a step ahead. You know what I mean?
You're a Renaissance man. Always looking ahead. Love it.
Now that I've made it more than halfway, I can't quit now. So got to keep it rolling.
Yes, absolutely. Ian should be along shortly. Speak of the devil, and Ben is in waiting. Maybe they've had some weather out there in Portland, and he currently is without that necessary item we call power. So we're hoping he's going to be able to jump on at some point, some way. We know you would all miss him otherwise, but we will do our best. Ian, how are you tonight?
I'm good. We're having some weather coming through tonight, apparently. But none of it will interfere, or none of it will ever top the greatest weather-related event in SCB podcast history.
Oh, here we go.
When Mark's power went out and we had SCB overtime.
Yeah. It's amazing how the power went out, but yet you guys were still able to keep recording, and that originated the whole overtime thing, which we're long overdue for, by the way. Maybe next week.
February 1st.
February 1st.
It might be next week.
That's 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Ian, what are you drinking? 2 weeks. My bad.
2 weeks so that Ryan can drink again.
Right.
I'm a quitter.
It's all right. If you're a quitter, that means you'll be a starter at some point too.
I'm like Eric Rowe.
I'm drinking my Christmas cheer drink, which tastes like a candy cane, and it's delicious. So,
you've been enjoying that now for a few weeks, huh?
Well, yes, because I really don't drink, vodka triple sec and peppermint schnapps and Fresca very often, but for the podcast, we go all out.
Now, was that a self-made concoction, or did you find this somewhere?
This was a concoction that my fraternity in college dreamed up for one of our events that we had, except we made it in like a big Gatorade cooler. I was
going to say, something tells me it was in like a Rubbermaid container.
Pretty much, yeah.
Kiddie pool.
So after I graduated, I had to back out the proportions into a single cup size because, as you know, when you're in college, you just dump whole handles into a Gatorade cooler and then you drink it. But as a adult, I had to be a little more responsible and distill it down to a single glass drink.
It is quite amazing the things that we drank alcohol out of when you really think about it. Maybe I'm just talking for myself and you, Ian, but
I never did it, but like our rugby kids would like drink out of a rugby boot, and I was like, that's disgusting.
Yeah, I'm not going there. Yeah, I mean, I'll drink out of like a brand new trash container somebody bought just so they could mix all the drink. That's fine, but no, I'm not drinking out of somebody's damn shoe. What the hell is that all about? Anyway, people are not here to hear us tell tall tales of drinking and stuff.
Try this toilet wine.
Right. I got a nice mix in my tub. And I just bathed too.
Snorted.
Wasn't there an episode of Seinfeld where Kramer washed his like lettuce in the shower?
Yes.
And made a salad
in fact,
with
he
it?
put the incinerator in the shower.
That's right.
To prepare his salads.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh God, what a classic. Anyway, all right. I'm gonna come out with it straight here, guys. Ian, I'll start with you first. Did the Pittsburgh Steelers in 2023 have a successful football season?
at the end of the day, this team is who we thought they were, right? They got there by a bit of a different path than we expected. Mm-hmm. I think when we went back to our season previews, we all kind of predicted they'd be right in that 9-7 to 11-6 kind of range. 10-7 was kind of the average. We had a varying degrees of make the playoffs, miss the playoffs. I think I was the most aggressive in my prediction and said maybe they win a playoff game if they get the right matchup. And I think I said I didn't like the matchup with Buffalo. But nevertheless, at the end of the day, they were who we thought they were. Oh, I have a visitor. Hey, you want to say hi to my friends? Say hi. What? This is Maggie.
Well,
she's
hello,
the one
Maggie.
I delivered in the bathtub.
Oh, hopefully that was before you mixed the drinks.
Oh, yeah. No, that was 3 years ago. But yeah, but at any rate, they are who we thought they were, right? They finished 10-7. They lost a playoff game. We kind of figured they weren't good enough to get to the divisional round, but at the end of the day, I mean, they went 5-1 against the division. They won 3 games on the West Coast, and they bounced back from 2 terrible losses. Now, granted, their resume was marred by those 2 terrible losses.
Right.
You want to talk now. Do you like watching the Steelers?
Yes.
Yes. Do you like waving the terrible towel? Okay. Yes. So
would you call it a successful season?
It wasn't an outright failure, but I'm not sure if I would call it a success. So I think I said at the beginning of the year, if we made the AFC Championship game, I would consider it a resounding success. If we won a playoff game, I would say it was a success. But I mean, if my options are success or failure, it wasn't a failure either. It's like somewhere in the middle. Okay. But yeah, if I was giving it a grade, it would be like a B-, C+ kind of year.
Okay, fair enough. Scarps, are you wearing Cam Hayward's hat, by the way?
Yeah, he gave this to me before I left.
That's nice. I noticed the 97 on the other side. I like how they do that for the players.
Bless his heart.
Would you call this season a success?
I mean, it's a tough question. On one hand, I'm going to say no, and I'm going to say that because Mike Tomlin today, in his season-ending press conference, reiterated that their goal is to be world champions, and I would say this type of season, for the Carolina Panthers or Oakland Raiders would be great, but this is the Steelers, and they are held to a higher standard. And so I think it's a failure because, they weren't world champions, but do I think this team overachieved to a certain extent? Yeah, I think so. I think that's fair. They did overachieve. They do have some talented players, but overall, they're not very good. They battled injuries all year, but, as we've been told by Mike Tomlin, next man up, standard is the standard. So, every team in this league's goal is to win a world championship, and only one team every year gets to do that. So they overachieved, but it's still not good enough. And yes, the season was a failure, as were the last however many since they were world champions. But, I like Ian said, I wouldn't give it a total F. But, I'd probably give them C-ish, something like that.
I think it's fair. I agree with you guys. I and I agree with what George is saying. The goal is to win a Super Bowl title. That's the goal. If you don't achieve the goal, then you haven't been successful. At the same time, I can also say there were positive steps taken in some areas. Ian mentioned winning on the West Coast, 5-1 in the division. There were positives to take from it. But at the end of the day, the NFL is a results-oriented business, and the biggest result we did not get. And so that's where we're at. I want to touch on something, and I know Ben and I definitely disagreed with this, and Scarps, I think you and I disagreed with this too. And I just wanted to throw it out there for the general audience too. When Tomlin was asked a question, Brooke Pryor, ESPN, asked him about, what's your future basically, and he stormed off. we all agreed his response was not good. He could have eliminated a bazillion different issues just by saying now's not the time. But he stormed off. That created a firestorm. I said I didn't like the question. You and Ben, and I don't know, Ian, how you felt about it. You guys were like, no, it's a fair question. And why did you, Ryan, feel that was a fair question at that time?
And this is loaded because Tomlin was again asked about it today. But
okay.
I think it's a fair question because numerous national analysts or insiders, if you will, have been talking about this. And the first person that talked about this was Jay Glazer, who is boys with Tomlin. And, no reporter, and I respect all the reporters, but no reporter flat out said like, well, this started because Jay Glazer said it. And like, we see you guys interact at training camp. Like we see you, like it's, so, I think it's a fair question. Do I think that the timing of it wasn't the best? Yeah, I'll give that. But at the end of the day, you can't control what questions you're asked, but you can control your responses. And Tomlin, and I've said this on the show a million times, Tomlin is not, he's not dumb. He's a very smart dude. So that's why I was stunned that he walked away. And then today he was all smiles and sunshine and rainbows. And it's like, what changed between then and now? It's kind of like the whole Kenny Pickett magically got cleared when he got home from Seattle. It's like it, and like I posted this earlier today. It's like that extension's a done deal, and then Art confirmed to Jerry Dulac that we're going to extend Mike. So it's like, did you not know? Like, and then he laughed about it today, and I appreciate that he right away addressed it and explained his rationale, but it's a fair question, especially when your buddy is the first one that reports it. And, whether Mike likes it or not, he hasn't done anything in the postseason for years now.
It's a long time.
So if you start connecting the dots, his buddy says, "Oh, Mike Tomlin might take some time off, and it's going to be up to Mike Tomlin what Mike Tomlin wants to do." Of course, you're going to get asked about it, and Mike's always the king of, "I'm not familiar with what you're asking about." It's like, bullshit, dude. You get briefed. I've briefed you before, man. Like, don't act like you don't know. But that's what I'm saying. He's very tactical and he's very smart about it, and. Again, I know Brooke. I respect Brooke. I think Brooke does a wonderful job. I'm sure she had pressure from her employer to ask that question and ask it as soon as possible. And she did.
Had it on their website numerous times, so I'm sure she was.
And she did. And again, Mike could have easily just said, "Hey, we'll talk about that later this week when I talk to you. This is about this game and this season." And he didn't. He like walked away, and he made it a story because he didn't answer it.
Yeah, exactly. And we were all on board with that part of it. Ian, what was your take on the question and his response? But also I'll throw another thing in there for you too. Is it at all possible, or maybe the better way of asking that, is it likely that Glazer and company, maybe Tomlin's response was all about getting this extension done at a market price that he wanted?
I mean, he's certainly well paid as it is, and in the market to be even more well paid now as the longest tenured head coach with his team in the league since Bill Belichick parted ways in New England. So I think it was a fair question. I'm not sure if that was the right spot to ask it, though. Like right as he's coming off the field after losing a playoff game. That said, for him just to walk away, after there was that speculation out there that he had to know about, from all the guys.
Oh, for sure.
And But that said, the simple response is just like, hey, I was so focused on coaching this game. I was trying to prepare my team. Like I'm not thinking about that right now. I'll talk about that in my season ending press conference, whatever. But to just kind of storm off, I've said all year that I thought his press conferences this year that he was a little snarkier and was a little, more short tempered. So I was a little surprised by that, I don't know if he's quite gotten to the point of like Chuck Noll saying that the media is the enemy, but he definitely had a different approach with the media this year than he did in past years, especially in like the public settings and the press conferences and things like that. So, I think it's a fair question though, given all the stories that are out there. That said, like, did you need to ask it like
timing?
Right, time. It's a timing thing, right? Yeah. Like maybe wait till he's going to do a season-ending press conference. Maybe wait till that. And today he even kind of joked about it, right? He ended his press conference by saying, "Does anybody have any more questions about my contract?" Ha ha ha. So it was like,
I think there's got to be a sense of relief, even though you lose. The season's over. It's a long, strenuous grind. So there's probably a sense of relief there. For sure. He just looked beat as the season wore on. But be that as it may, it sounds like it's going to be a done deal now, and we'll move on from there. I wanted to talk about the Bills game a little bit. It's 3 days old now. There's not a lot of sense getting too far into it, but Ryan, did you feel at any time the Steelers had a chance in that game?
No. Even when they cut it to 7, I knew the Bills were going to go right down the field. Say what you want about Josh Allen. The dude is a killer.
He is.
Yes, and all week Steelers fans are like, "Oh, we're gonna force 3 turnovers." I'm like, "Yeah, right, okay."
I thought we'd get one. I'll say that.
And I would, I didn't even think we were gonna get one, and the only way we were gonna get one is probably because they fumbled it. And I was like, okay, if it snows, maybe they fumble. But I'm sitting there thinking like, our defense is not good enough to pick him off. I'm sorry, it's just not. And without TJ, and Minka had to do more, and Minka did not have a good game. But Josh Allen is a killer. You just knew he was going down the field. I appreciate that they fought because once again, down 21-0. Like, oh my God, like we'll talk. We'll talk probably more about Mike Tomlin.
Yes.
Again, I think he's a great coach, but like, oh my God, it's been
end of the half.
It's been so bad these past 5 postseason games, and I get if I was in his shoes, I'd be ecstatic too if I got an extension because I've been a regular season champ for how many years now with nothing to show for it, and it was 14-0. Mason threw that. Mason had a bad throw. There's no question. And then they made it 21-0. And I mean, when you're down 21-0, as we've seen, whether they're at home or on the road, it's really hard to come back when you're down 21. In either location.
Yep.
But no, once it got to 14, I was like, this game's over. Then it was 21. It's over.
Yeah, and this is an interesting point from Aaron right here about the fact that it ended up being the second most competitive game of the entire weekend. I don't know that I would have believed that either. After all the blowouts we saw, Saturday and Sunday. But be that as it may, do they need to address the issue of the quarterback slide and the fake slide? I'll give that one to you.
I think it needs to be equitably enforced, right? We've seen plenty of hits on Justin Fields, on even Mason Rudolph earlier in the game, slid, and the hit was probably about the same timing as the hit that Miles Jack got flagged for on Josh Allen. So, I mean, there's no way that touchdown run by Allen. There's no way you could have called him down or even fake sliding or thinking about sliding. Like he slowed running, but never entered any kind of sliding motion that you could say he was down. Like that was a completely legal play what he did.
Agreed.
I understand the complaint that like the first time he stopped and started, and Lamar Jackson does that stuff all the time. There was a play maybe 2 or 3 years ago where Lamar was dancing all around and Cam Hayward was coming at him and he stepped out of bounds, and then Hayward blew him up and got flagged for a 15-yard penalty for hitting a guy out of bounds. And it's like, if you don't hit him there, he's going to take off going up the field. Like, what are you supposed to do? There's things that put the defensive players in bad positions. But I think you just they need to equitably enforce those flags for, hits on a sliding player and things like that. But it is kind of a lose-lose situation, right? Where if the defensive player launches himself, then the quarterback goes down and gets a flag versus if the defensive player doesn't launch into a tackling move, then the quarterback just keeps running. Like it's a lose-lose proposition for the defense. So, I think it's more about equitably enforcing the hits during the slide.
Yeah, there's no consistency, and like Nate Burleson, from at halftime was basically like, he's like, Josh Allen's not sliding in the open field like that. And he didn't. He runs like Fred Flintstone. Like hey,
Bon.
Yeah, but on the Miles Jack play, those types of plays, you're right, Ian, they're not consistently enforced.
Yeah.
And my whole thing is, when the quarterbacks go into the ground, don't touch them. And it's just the way it is. It's just the way it is now. And I know it puts defenders in a tough spot, but just, I mean, if they're giving themselves up, why would you give them an extra 15?
Do you agree though, Scarps, that there are times when it's simultaneous when you get a defender coming in to make a tackle, quarterback's going into the slide? I mean, and I just look at it from a purely scientific point. I don't know how you stop your momentum at that point.
I don't know either. I don't know either. The DeMonte KZ hit on Michael Pittman. I get why they're trying to protect the head, but
absolutely.
But but even the Higbee play from the Lions game.
Ooh,
I mean,
boy.
But what do you want? What do you want him to do? I mean, Tyler Higbee is a grown ass man. You can't hit him high, you can't hit him low. And Dan Campbell flat out said, he's like, hey man, we're aiming for the thigh pad. And you know what? If Tyler Higbee moves a little bit, or vice versa, or Kirby Joseph moves vice versa, whatever it is, you get a blown out knee. And like it's very, very hard to defend in the league. And I believe me, I feel for the defenders, but this is just the way it is now. And if they can, I'm fine if they consistently enforce the calls, but they don't. You're right. Justin Fields gets smacked and they don't do anything. Patrick Mahomes barely gets smacked and they call in the National Guard. But it's just like Josh Allen is a big ass dude, and he is not going down in the open field.
Well, Mahomes is starting to really irritate the hell out of me. He is whining on every single play. I mean, if a guy breathes on him, he immediately looks over at the official. It's irritating.
And speaking of that, and this is funny to me because he's absolutely now getting the Brady treatment.
Oh, for sure.
His helmet like breaks, and the referees like taps him, is like, oh, go fix your helmet. Any other guy, they got to take a timeout, or he has to miss a play, or and they're just like, oh, Patrick, go get your second helmet, bud, and get back in the game. Like, it's just like there's no consistency.
Yeah, and I don't remember the team that was calling. It might have been Blackledge and the other guy that were calling that, but they were right on that. They're like, hey, wait a minute. Normally a team's got to take a timeout here to deal with this. It reminded me of almost like in an NBA game or a college basketball game where a guy gets something on his uniform or has to run over and just runs over, takes care of it, comes back.
Yeah,
nothing going. But that's not how the NFL works. But be that as it may, I root for the Bills. They got a great fan base. I mean, I think it would be wonderful for them, small market team, to get to the Super Bowl and hopefully win it at this point. But it's going to be tough. There's some really good quarterbacks left in the AFC, especially. But we got there, and where we were 4 or 5 weeks ago, I don't know. But yeah, and to Matt's point here, the other thing too, you interview 10 different receivers in the NFL, and they'll tell you go high. I'd rather have a concussion and miss a week than have my entire season gone because of a knee. And I think that's kind of what Matt Stafford was saying to the DB and so on. But I get it.
Matt Stafford annoys the shit out of me too.
Well, the NFL's not getting sued over knee injuries either. So there's that.
Exactly. Great point. They're not. Can I? Yeah,
you're doing that thing.
No, I've got two different things I want to get into, but no, go ahead.
Yeah, can I just jump in on the Bills game because I was off when you asked Ryan about his impressions of the Bills game. This game followed a very similar script to a lot of other games that I've seen, and hold on one second. Sorry, I had a 3-year-old who was like, I need to use the potty. And I was like, go use it then. Don't stand here in the middle of my carpeted living room. Okay. So this was the 4th straight playoff game that the Steelers have spotted the opponents at least a 3 touchdown lead.
Yep.
At least a 21-0 lead before the let me rephrase that. At least a 3 touchdown lead before our offense scored, because a couple years ago in Kansas City in Ben's last game, TJ Watt returned that fumble for a touchdown, but then Kansas City scored 5 touchdowns in a row and it was 35-7 before our offense put points on the board. So it was the 4th straight game that the other team had at least 3 offensive touchdowns before our offense scored. But also similar script that Steelers fans will recognize. We got behind early, we battled back and made it sort of close. And then I think I said to you guys in our chat, I said, like, I've seen this script before. They get close enough, and then like either the refs blow a call or somebody fumbles in a Super Bowl, or somebody makes a play and then that person is like the GOAT, not the greatest of all time, but like the scapegoat of it's that person's fault that we lost. And you even saw it in this game, right? Like George Pickens blaming the refs, like it's the refs' fault we lost for not calling pass interference. And was it pass interference? Probably yes. I mean, it was arguably no less than what they called in the Super Bowl that gave Mahomes the victory, last year.
Yeah.
So there's that, but you can't rely on the refs to win you a game when you spot the other team a 21-point lead, right? They called 2 penalties against the Bills all game. So it is what it is. But at the same time, like, it's such a familiar script. It's like we spotted them a lead, we battled back, and then something happened, whether it was we committed a turnover or the refs blew a call or whatever, and that person's now the scapegoat of why we lost this game. Absolutely. And it's like, no, we spotted them a 21-0 lead. Actually, if you want to ask the turning point in the game, it was that interception Mason threw in the end zone and then they marched 90 yards or 80 yards for a touchdown after that. I mean, that's a 14-point swing right there.
But on that same drive, it was so we talk about the refs, right? On the same drive, Muth fumbled and the Bills absolutely got that ball in bounds, and they would have been at like the 50 and they were going to score regardless.
How did they say that it grazed his helmet? I didn't see any angle that suggested that that's what happened.
I think it was that the call on the field was the call on the field was not a fumble or out of bounds or whatever. And they were just like, we don't want to deal with this shit anymore. We're just sticking with the call on the field.
Steelers, hang on to the damn ball.
Yeah. And that's another point that I think we talked about, but about, Mike Tomlin's playoff failures and all that. And yes, we haven't won a playoff game in 7 years. That is the truth. But at the same time, like Mike Tomlin didn't tell Pat Freiermuth to go out there and fumble that ball. He didn't tell George Pickens to go out there and fumble that ball. Like he didn't tell Mason Rudolph to, hey, throw this ball completely to the inside of this guy instead of throwing it to the, throwing it on the pylon, right? So yes, Tomlin owns the playoff failures, but also at the same time, the players have some part in that too.
Absolutely. I do wonder though, because it is a pattern now, 4 or 5 postseason games. I mean, is there something that Tomlin just isn't doing or is doing?
I think if you ask me, it's starting slow, right? That spotting teams 21-0 leads, you're not going to come back.
No, you're hardly going to do that in the regular season, let alone the postseason, Ryan.
And yes, I think in their last 5 playoff games, they're -10 in turnover differential.
Yeah, it's
I
like
think
10
they have
to 2 or 12 to 2,
12 to 2 or something like that. But Tomlin, who's supposed to be the defensive guy, they're getting outscored 66-0 in the first quarter of these it again. Oh my God, like the national people that are just like saying that listen, we can shit on the Cowboys all we want, but the national people that are like, this is insane, they're keeping Mike McCarthy. It's like, well, what is it that the Steelers are doing? How is it not the same thing? Like,
it's a fair question.
It's just like, it's so bizarre. And like, I don't wish any ill will towards Mike Tomlin. This is the first year I've even questioned if he's still the right guy. And again, like, it's just, Ian talks about patterns. Every playoff game for the past 5 has been the same thing. They get the doors blown off them early. They try to make a comeback and then they just shit the bed. And it's like, and I get it. I totally get it. Mason Rudolph versus Josh Allen. But like, we don't have Josh Allen, but we're supposed to have this great defense, and we're supposed to have a great defensive coach. I know you didn't have TJ Watt, but I don't know. I'm tired of making excuses. And if they would have just won a playoff game in 2017 and 2020, I thought about this. If they beat the Jaguars and lose in the AFC Championship, but that they beat the Browns and lose in the divisional round,
right?
I wouldn't give a shit if they lost 31-17 to the Bills, because this team shouldn't even probably have been there. And like, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. So it's like, if they would just won a playoff game, I don't think people would be so mad at Tomlin. But like, the dude at one point today said, I'm not job scared. And I was like, damn, like, Casey will touch on this later, but like, he's like, more than anything, it's like, I don't have to address these questions to you guys. And I'm like, wow, dude, like, do you think your job's that secure? And to me, I mean, dude, like, I understand that you're one of the, have a great winning percentage, but you haven't done anything in you're 3-9 in your last 12 postseason games. Like, it's been 13 years of nothing.
Most coaches
non-losing seasons.
Yeah, most coaches would never get that opportunity to even get there.
And it's funny because, sorry, Mark, go ahead.
No, I'm just going to say, I think if there's a common denominator in all of it, I think they're getting out-coached early. I think the way that offensive coordinators are scheming against the Steelers in these postseason games, they're just beating them with scheme and stuff, and it's too late by the time we adjust. I mean, I don't know how anybody could look at those 4 or 5 games. Yes, there were turnovers, don't get me wrong, there were, but there were also pretty consistent, long, solid drives too. So that's where I'm at.
I agree, and our defenses aren't making adjustments, and then our offenses are running the ball through between the tackles, fucking against
cover one,
9-man front, 9 guys in a box, and it's like, I mean, Naj had a couple good games in a row, and then they couldn't run the ball against the Bills, and what? Credit the Bills, they are a better team. Josh Allen is a beast. their defense has lost a ton of
Their
guys.
depth was better than our depth.
Yes. Like,
Yep.
And it's funny because they lost just as many inside linebackers as we have.
Yeah.
And then, like, as soon as he came in, I was like, "Holy shit! They still have AJ Clyde."
I was the same way. Like,
I thought he was hurt, and I was just like,
retired.
I was like, yeah, I thought he was just hurt, and I was like, wow, I was like, that's still a pretty good depth piece. I mean, it's way better than Miles Jack off Jesus, Miles Jack sitting on the couch. But like, it's so kudos to Sean McDermott. They're ever since they got rid of Ken Dorsey, they've been on fire.
Yeah,
their defense has been really, really good despite being injured. And you know what? Russell Douglas is going to be back this week. Probably Gabe Davis might be back this week. They're they still don't have. We'll talk about predictions later, but
sure.
Credit the Bills, man. Like they did what they needed to do.
They did, and their depth was better. I think when you look at that pattern, there's a lot of schematic advantages that these coordinators are having over us. And speaking of coordinators, now one thing I think a lot of us were happy about today was that Tomlin did say they're going to look outside for an offensive coordinator. The thing he didn't say, though, is what nobody's talking about, is that it sounds like he's going to stay status quo on defense. And that concerns me. Now, I could be wrong. There could be a change coming there, too. But I've not been impressed with Teryl Austin. As Matt said, and we've said a million times on this program, Brian Flores was the guy that should have been given that job, not Teryl Austin. But, what do I know, or what do we know? But as far as the OC, Ian, what do you want to see in a new just give me some bullet points of what you want to see in a new OC?
Somebody who can put players in positions to take advantage of their skill sets and doesn't try and be like, this is my offense and I'm going to run it, and whatever guys we have are going to have to run my stuff, right? Like, you want an offense geared towards what your players do well and what their skill sets are, and putting them in positions to succeed, and also being able to just like scheme guys open, right?
Yeah.
Or scheme a running play where the blocking is going to open it up. It's like, just being able to scheme something that, it's like, oh, we're going to run this pass concept where if they're playing zone, we'll read this side of the field because we've got a zone beating concept over here. And if they're playing man, we'll read this side of the field because we've got a man beating concept over here. And like something like that, Tomlin did also say that I think is noteworthy, that his preference is for somebody who's been a coordinator before.
Yep.
And there have been a handful of coordinators that have been fired. Or moved on from, or have their head coaches fired. Now, does that mean, there's a lot of question marks out there right now, like a guy like Eric Bieniemy, who I know we've talked about a lot on this show. Washington's looking for a new head coach. Are they going to keep Bieniemy around? Are they going to, is their new head coach going to want to bring in his own guy? Same thing with Shane Waldron in Seattle, who I think is one of the best young coordinators in the league. Seattle moved on from Pete Carroll. So are they going to keep Shane Waldron as their offensive coordinator, or are they going to move on from him? Cleveland, to their credit, as much as I hate saying this about the Browns, had a top 10 scoring offense this year without their starting quarterback or starting running back, who were like the star of the show, and fired their offensive coordinator. So, it is what it is. The other thing I thought was noteworthy about Tomlin's press conference today was somebody asked him if he was opposed to adding more staff on the offensive side of the ball as like additional assistants. And he said that anything was on the table. And I think we talked about this last year, that we were kind of like, what they should have done, what they should have done was fire Matt Canada. But what they should have done in addition to that was hire someone like a Jim Caldwell under a title of like a senior offensive assistant.
Yep, and we did. We talked about that several times.
Have that brain in the building. And then it's like, if you need to move on from Canada, you have a guy who's kind of done it before, who you can plug in. and they didn't do that. So I think personally, I'm not tied to someone who has been a coordinator before, but Tomlin specifically said that today. So I think that's kind of where they're leaning right now. And actually, you mentioned about the Bills firing Ken Dorsey. To Dorsey's credit, he got fired because Josh Allen couldn't stop turning the ball over.
That was it.
Last year, they were a top 5 scoring offense, and they were a top 10 scoring offense this year before he got fired. And the change has basically been that Allen stopped turning the ball over and they started winning games.
Absolutely. And Scarps, before I turn it over to you, I'm going to say one thing about Eric Bieniemy. The one thing I would like about him, he holds guys accountable. If I've seen it once, I've seen it 1,000 times, that one of the things that the Chiefs are really struggling with this year is their offense lacks that guy that goes over to a player and says, if you can't do the job, you're not playing. Because Andy Reid didn't do that. It was Eric Bieniemy that used to do that. And I'm not saying that means Eric Bieniemy would be the greatest coach ever, but when you listen to comments like what Najee Harris said, some of these other things, I would love that part of it. Now, the rest of it, I don't know. I think Brian Greasy's got an opportunity to be a good coordinator, but as Matt points out, he hasn't been a coordinator yet. So according to Tomlin, probably out. Scarps, what do you look for here?
I got a variety of things here. I would prefer that. First of all, it can't just be an offensive coordinator. I want to make that clear. They need to add multiple minds to this offensive staff. I'm not saying that Ken Dorsey would want to be a quarterback's coach, but he's a younger dude. Why not? This can't just be, we just need an offensive coordinator. They need young, innovative minds and new ideas.
Yeah.
That being said, I would prefer that any of these coaches that they want to add on offense do not have ties to the Steelers. No Hines Ward, no Byron Leftwich. And I just fucking know they're going to hire Byron Leftwich, which would be a huge mistake. But the other thing I would say is that I think the abilities and the capabilities of the quarterbacks will dictate who they hire as an offensive coordinator. And I mean that because I think Kenny Pickett and Mason Rudolph are both limited to a certain extent. And I really don't know how, we're going to learn a lot this year, regardless of who the coordinator is, about quarterback play. But I don't know if those guys can do everything. You know what I mean? I don't know if those guys are capable of handling, but we'll see. But again, they need to open. I posted this earlier. They need to open up the wallet and hire some guys. Yeah. And you know what? And here's the other thing too. I don't want some old fossil in here. Okay. If you want to bring in Jim Caldwell as an offensive assistant senior, great, more power to you. But if a coach or coordinator comes here for a couple years and then leaves, who cares? As long as they elevated us, this can't be like, we've only had 3 coaches since 1969, so we can only have 3 coordinators, over the past 30 years. We can't do that. So no ties to the Steelers.
I'm all for that.
Someone that understands the limitations of the quarterback, but still puts guys in the best positions to succeed. Some guys, a guy that can get guys at his pace. But again, not just a coordinator, whether it's a quarterback coach, a passing game coordinator, quality control, I don't care. Just bring some young, innovative minds. Matt, you brought up Pep Hamilton, and I was looking him up earlier, and I don't hate that, but also he was a coordinator 4 years, and he had a top 10 offense one time, and that was in 2014 with Andrew Luck in Indianapolis. Andrew Luck ain't walking through that door. His last year as a coordinator was 2022 in Houston, and they had the 31st ranked offense. So
You know what I would bring him in for, though? I'd bring him in to work with my quarterbacks.
Quarterback coach, quality control, fine. But I don't think he's OC worthy. That's just my opinion.
I know he was in the college ranks and did a great job with some of the college QBs too. So yeah, I'm with you. I'm a little concerned it's going to be Byron Leftwich. But I'm hopeful that it's going to be a little more of an independent thought than that. So let's talk about the quarterbacks. Go ahead.
Can I bring up one other point on offensive coordinators? Offensive coordinator in the NFL in 2024 is a short-time gig. And I say that we're not going to find someone. You're not going to find a Dick LeBeau of the offense that's going to be your coordinator for 10 years, right? As much as Dick LeBeau was awesome, you're not going to find that, right? So Pete Carmichael got fired by the Saints, and Alex Van Pelt got fired by
the Browns.
The Browns, yes. So that means that sorry, I posted this on Slack. I was trying to find it. The longest tenured offensive coordinators right now in the league are Shane Waldron in Seattle and Dave Ragone in Atlanta, and they were hired in 2021. Wow. And both of those teams fired their head coaches, so there's no guarantee those guys will be back.
Right.
So if they're both not back, then every offensive coordinator in the league will have been hired in 2022 or later. So 2 years or less on the job. So basically what that's saying is, if you're an offensive coordinator in the NFL, you're either awesome and get a head coaching gig, or you suck and get fired. And that's it. Like, those are the two options. And you see it right now, right? Like, with all the guys getting head coaching offers. Oh, sorry, Brian Callahan in Cincinnati was hired in 2019, but he's been a popular candidate for
he's interviewing for head jobs right now.
Right, exactly. So in the NFL now, if you're a good offensive coordinator, if you're an offensive coordinator, your career trajectory is either you're getting fired or you're becoming a head coach. Like, that's it. And you're probably not lasting more than 2 or 3 years. So we're not going to find someone who's going to be a long-term solution. Offensive coordinator is not a long-term gig. Like, you're looking
true.
What you're looking for is, honestly, what you're looking for is a short-term system that has enough guys that believe in it that you can easily make replacements, right? So let's take, I know the Steelers have never gone this route, but let's take the Shanahan system, right? And all the guys that have come out of it.
Yeah.
Sean McVay came out of it and all those guys, right? But there's the Shanahan system and so many guys that know it, that Sean McVay in Los Angeles has been able to replace offensive coordinators because there's so many guys that just do this Shanahan system that you can be like, okay, I lost a guy. He became a head coach in wherever, but we've got another guy who's a Shanahan disciple and knows the Shanahan system. And we've functionally been running the same offense since, like, Ron Earhart was our offensive coordinator.
It sure seems that way.
It's basically the same. I mean, maybe there was a little schematic difference here and there, but it's basically the same offense since Ron Earhart in like 1998 was our offensive coordinator. Like, Chan Gailey was the last one who really did anything different. So yeah, it's
Are you sure Chan Gailey won't be the next offensive coordinator?
I am not saying a word, because who the hell knows?
Yeah,
Kevin Gilbride.
Yeah, but I'm just saying that, like, you know, we're, regardless of who we hire, it's not going to be a long-term thing. Like, if he's awesome and we lead the league in scoring, he's getting head coaching interviews next year. You know, like, look at Ben Johnson in Detroit. Like, you know, he was awesome for 2 years. Now he's getting head coach. He's going to be a head coach somewhere.
Yeah, Ian, I completely agree. You know, that's why, like, as soon as Tomlin said we're looking outside, and Yinzer Nation was like, oh, I thought, like, it's funny because we went from the agony of defeat, and then all of a sudden Tomlin does his season-ending press conferences, and he looks confident, and he says the right things, and Yinzer Nation is like, oh, we're back, we're Super Bowl 2024. And as soon as he said that, like, we're looking outside, I'm like, okay, that's fine. And then he said about prior experience, And that's why, like I said, I'm so nervous that it's just going to be such a dud, and we're going to be in the same spot that we've been in. Because Ian, I totally agree, but this team still sticks to their ways, and I can picture them bringing in a Leftwich guy, or maybe even somebody that's older. And that's the other thing too, is like the game has changed so much, just even over the past 10 years. Anyway, whatever. I'm really nervous it's going to be Byron Leftwich. And the reason I'm nervous is because of the obviously ties to the Steelers, but also Byron Leftwich had Tom Brady for a couple years, and then the 1 year he had Jameis Winston, they were a top offense. But Jameis Winston threw 30 interceptions that year. And look at last year when Brady couldn't do anything. They were terrible. And then his first year, his only coordinator year in Arizona, they were terrible. And it's just I'm scared that they're gonna pick somebody.
No, I agree with you.
You know who else is out there? And I don't know if offensive coordinator, but that senior offensive assistant, like Frank Reich, who is, kind of bombed out as a head coach.
Right.
But I've said for a while that I firmly believe there are guys who are good at being head coaches, and there are guys who are just good at being coordinators.
No
Jack Del Rio is
question.
a perfect example.
No
was
question.
A really good defensive coordinator, but was a shit-ass head coach, right?
Some guys just don't do it. They can't do it.
And some of it's that like being the CEO kind of thing, right? Like they're really good at coordinating one side of the ball. And maybe Frank Reich doesn't want to be a coordinator, doesn't want to do the day-to-day kind of job. But maybe as like a senior offensive assistant where he gets paid to just kind of be in the building and be like, hey, I've developed quarterbacks. Here's a good thing to do. Here's a good thing to consider. Like, but that's a system guy, right? That's like the Frank Reich system. And he came up and that's kind of what Philly's still running, even though, Shane Steichen's the head coach now, but he was an assistant under Reich. And it's like, but you get that system guy, and then it's easier to find replacements for those people when they move on to head coaching jobs, hopefully, because that's the best scenario, right? That we're so good on offense that the coordinator becomes a head coach.
Would it be fair to say that any coordinator that's got coordinating experience also should hopefully have some experience with a young QB that has shown some positive steps forward? I think that's what I'm looking for. And that's my only saving grace, I think, Scarps, with thinking it might not be Leftwich, because his guys, when he did have young guys, if I recall, they weren't great. And then when he had Brady, well, we know Brady.
Who do you think was calling those plays?
Yeah.
And are we going to talk about the QBs?
Yeah, we can kind of segue into that right now. And just to be clear, Mason Rudolph's a free agent. They will make an attempt to re-sign him. He loves Pittsburgh. He says all the right things. That doesn't mean some other team isn't going to come along and blow him out of the water with a great offer that he can't refuse. Mitch Trubisky, I think almost everybody knows, is going to be cut. He's going to make too much money. Get rid of him, save a little cap money, and then you got the year dead money. And then, of course, you got Pickett. People got upset. Some people got upset today when he kind of said, Kenny's QB1. Well, who else is there? You don't really have anybody else there. And I'm pretty sure you're not talking about Trace McSorley. So, so go ahead. Right. I would be stunned if he's back. Let's put it that way. Yeah. So, Scarps, did you have further comment on the QBs?
It was just, if they do bring in a coordinator that has recently been coordinating, Byron Leftwich not included, and also Pep Hamilton not included. But if they bring in a guy, maybe that coordinator brings in a quarterback that he's familiar with. So then you have Kenny, some random veteran quarterback that comes with the OC, and maybe a draft pick, but then maybe Mason resigns. And Tomlin today complimented Mason a ton. He kept repeating that there will be competition.
Yep.
And he flat out said, we want to do business with Mason. Now, did Mason, did he play well enough where he gets money elsewhere? I don't know, but regardless, you can't go into the season with Kenny and Mason battling it out for QB1. You just can't.
No.
They're going to do that.
And okay, and you know what, Ian, you're probably right, and it's a shame because whoever wins that battle is arguably one of the worst quarterbacks in the AFC. And you know, that is not hyperbole. Like
I don't think so,
because you got to think the Raiders are going to try to get a quarterback, and he'll be probably a rookie. And this is a pretty good quarterback class. I just you're not gonna you know what, I don't want to take Casey's material away from him, but
no, don't do that.
They need to do their due diligence and bring in a veteran guy, in my opinion, to regardless of whether it's Mason and Kenny. You got to bring in a veteran. I messaged you guys on Slack.
Yeah,
I would take Tyrod Taylor right now over Mason and Kenny.
Well, I mean, I go back to the original decision to keep playing Mason. I mean, the fact of the matter is the offense was competent under Mason. They could score. And it was not under Kenny. And I mean, if let's say Mason Rudolph had a year left on his deal. And what if Mike Tomlin would walk in and say, yeah, we're going with Mason? Would anybody really think he was out of his mind? I don't. I mean, I want Kenny Pickett to succeed. I want to be able to say we spent a first-round draft pick on a guy who has led us to some great things. I want to be able to say that. I haven't seen anything that makes me be able to say that yet, though. That's the problem.
Pickett being good is good for the Steelers. Right? Mason turning around his career is good for the Steelers. Mm-hmm. But I haven't seen anything from Pickett that makes me believe he's suddenly going to turn this around and be great. And then I think Mason is a great story. I've supported him, but I don't trust him long term.
Nope.
You know what I mean?
Don't either.
I just don't. And you know, I would also say too that, if I'm an OC and I'm trying to make a name for myself, and there probably will be those guys, but if I'm an OC and I have experience and I come to interview with the Steelers and Mike Tomlin looks at me and goes, yeah, it's either going to be Mason or Kenny. You have to work with him. Like, huh? Can we do better? I don't want to, that's a shit show. I'm not
Ryan,
trying to deal with this.
That's a great point. I mean, because if I'm a new coordinator coming in and I'm interviewing, that's going to be one of my first questions.
But if I'm a young guy that doesn't have coordinator experience and I want to make a name for myself, I'm like, oh, I could work with this. It's like 2 shitty ingredients and you got to make a 5-star, 4-star dish. It's like
it ain't going to be a Michelin dish, maybe. Ian, I know you have some comments on this, and so let it rip.
I do. Ryan, did you get everything out you wanted to say? Because I got
yes.
I'm going to talk for a while here.
Ian's ready to roll here.
I feel like there's times on this show where, that scene from Guardians of the Galaxy where they're like, quiet, Captain's going to teach stuff. There's people in the chat who are like, oh, Ian's going off again. Here we go, Steelers Freak's not with us tonight. Usually he's like, oh, Ian's going to teach stuff.
No burner either. They must still be in mourning.
That's okay. I know I'm preaching to the choir, but here's the problem that the Steelers have got themselves in, right? They spent a first-round pick on Kenny Pickett.
Yep.
And they're going to want to give him one more chance. I mean, Tomlin even said that today, right? They asked him who is the starter next year on the roster today, and he said yes. So they're going to want to give Kenny a chance to compete for the starting job. So given that, when you're looking at the quarterback market out there, right, you're not going to go out and sign a Kirk Cousins or a Justin Fields or whatever, who is going to be your starter, right? If you go get one of those guys, they're going to be your starter, right? If you're going to pay Kirk Cousins $35 million a year in guaranteed money, he's going to be your starter. There's no competition, but they're going to want a competition. They're going to want Kenny to compete for the job. So that means they're not going to go out and go after a Baker Mayfield or a Kirk Cousins or whatever, right?
No.
So that knocks you down to the next tier quarterbacks. Now you're talking about guys like Tyrod Taylor, like, Jacoby Brissett, like Mason Rudolph, like Drew Lock. So, okay, but I mean, all those guys are kind of the Spider-Man meme, just pointing at each other, right? Like, Jacoby Brissett is fine. Jacoby Brissett's probably better than any quarterback we have on the roster right now. But like Jacoby Brissett's not going to go out and win you a playoff game either. So, at the end of the day, I know Ben, who's not with us tonight, has said before repeatedly that we have 3 backup quarterbacks on the roster. Like, if you rank out the quarterbacks in the league, we don't have anyone that's better than 25th right now. And we're probably
AFC right now, for God's sake.
And we're probably not going to be able to sign anyone that's better than 25th. Right. So this is kind of where I'm at, and I can't believe I've gotten to this point, but I guess I should throw like Gardner Minshew in there too, which if we sign Gardner Minshew, he immediately is like a folk hero in Pittsburgh for the mustache and everything else.
Oh my God. Could you imagine Gardner Minshew and Jim Bob Cooter? I'm not even kidding you. I mean, like, it would be legendary. Like, I agree. Like, Minshew, and you brought in Jim Bob Cooter, has the greatest name of all time, but still, like, I'd be fine with that, because like
Gardner Minshew lit us the fuck up this year. Like, so,
without Michael Pittman.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, but I can't believe I'm saying this, but the best long-term thing for the Steelers might be to suck for a year to get a good draft pick to get a quarterback. And if you look at like the guys who are the premier starters in the league,
right,
your Brock Purdy's and Jalen Hurts aside, most of them were top 12 picks in the draft. Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, Tua, Justin Herbert. Most of the premier quarterbacks were top 12 picks. We're in quarterback purgatory right now. We're picking 15th to 20th every year. You're going to get a tier 2 or tier 3 like at best, you might get the 4th best quarterback in a draft. You might get Mac Jones picking at that point, right? Because that's what the Patriots did, right? They were like, oh, we're picking 16th. Mac Jones is still here. Yeah, we'll take him. And look how that played out, right? So, and we picked Kenny Pickett 20th overall, right? If you want the elite talent, you got to be in the top 12. So that either means if you're going to be mid, as the kids would say, and stay in that,
mid,
right around the fringe of the playoffs kind of range, then you're going to be picking 15th, 20th every year, and you're going to have to trade next year's first round pick to move up just to get into the top 10 to pick maybe the 3rd best quarterback at 8th or 9th overall. And then you've mortgaged your future to take like the 3rd best quarterback. Or you could suck for a year. I know. I can't believe I'm saying this, but if you suck for a year, then maybe you land, CJ Stroud at number 2, or you land a Justin Herbert at 6 or 7, wherever he was picked, right? You give yourself a chance, right? And I can't believe I'm saying this, because I always want the Steelers to be the best they can be. I don't want them to suck, but Kenny Pickett's not the long-term answer. And thinking long-term, the best thing long-term might be to suck for a year. And that's not a referendum on Mike Tomlin. If Mike Tomlin has a losing season, it doesn't mean Mike Tomlin's a bad coach, right?
Right.
The Steelers went 6-10 under Bill Cowher, and then drafted Ben Roethlisberger and went 15-1 the next year, and then won the Super Bowl the following year.
Yeah.
It's not a referendum on the coach. It's that you just suck for a year. And sometimes that's what you need to do, especially in this day and age in the NFL, where it's a quarterback-driven league. to get that elite talent at quarterback.
So I will say this. That I'm surprised a little bit by the comments in the chat that I guess people don't think Justin Fields is that good. Justin Fields is immediately the best quarterback on the Steelers roster, and I think he automatically becomes a top half in the AFC.
That's what I was just gonna.
The dude has legs. The dude, like, watch him throw the ball. Like, I'm not gonna say he doesn't have turnovers or whatever, but like he's still a project. But like that dude's ceiling is way high. Anyway, getting back to that, but Ian, we talk about like sucking or don't want to suck. What have they done the past 7 years?
They've been mid, right?
They've been mid.
They've been in, we're in that purgatory range of like picking 15th to 20th, right? We're right on that fringe of like we're not good enough to win the Super Bowl, but we're not bad enough to get.
You're like it's like being the kid who's asked pick a number between 1 and 10, and every time the kid says 5.
So what?
Every single time.
So would you rather maybe be 9 and 8 or 10 and 7 and get your doors blown off in the first round like we have been doing, or would you rather be 5 and 12 and get a really good player, a much better player than you would at 20? Because to me, I'd take two out of these past 7 years. I would take 2 5 and 12 seasons to be able to get a CJ Stroud or to be able to get
Justin Herbert
Justin Herbert.
Yeah.
Not Tua, but
No.
or even like 1 year you get a Herbert, and then the next year you get a stud offensive tackle that can play on the right side, so Broderick Jones can go back to the left. You know what I mean? Like, like it's just like,
And I'm not saying the Steelers should tank, right? Because I'm on the record on the show saying you always want to be in the dance.
You're never
going to
get that under Mike Tomlin anyway.
And you always want to be competitive. But, I mean, how many games did we win by 1 score this year, right? You flip a couple of those results, and all of a sudden, I mean, Bill Cowher always said that the line between 10 and 6 and 6 and 10 was a very thin line. And to Jamie's point in the chat here, Mark, if you want to put it up on the screen too, that Baltimore settled for Lamar Jackson at 32. That's true. Baltimore also completely redesigned their offense to fit Lamar's skill set. If Lamar had been drafted by the Jets when they picked Sam Darnold instead, if Lamar goes to the Jets in quarterback killer Adam Gase is his head coach, I don't think he becomes Lamar Jackson, right?
No, I agree.
Situation matters a lot for quarterbacks, and you got to have that situation in place for them to be able to be successful.
And they fired who the hell is his name? Oh my God, Greg Roman. They fired the offensive coordinator, and then they rebuilt the offense with Todd Monken.
You guys were talking about Gardner Minshew. He has 37 starts in 5 seasons in the NFL. What do you think his record is?
37 starts?
Yeah, so he had 12 in Jacksonville. Or I'm sorry, no, he would have had 20 in Jacksonville. He had 4 in Philly, and then he had 13 this year in Indianapolis.
23 and 15.
19 and 18.
15 and 22.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so one for the 1,000th time, win-loss is a team stat. Quarterback win-loss is a team stat.
Yep.
So for all the fucking picketologists who say, "Well, Kenny's a winner," team stat.
No, that's team stat. I mean, I was stunned by that. I was just looking at it. So let's talk about Fields just for a second. There's a lot of people talking about him in the chat, and I want to be respectful of that.
I love Justin Fields. I would love him on the Steelers. Honestly, my biggest hangup is I think the I think the Bears, since Ryan Poles is still their GM, are snakebit over the Chase Claypool trade and just wouldn't do business with us.
I think that is 100% accurate. I can see. I totally buy that. But I'm going to ask you, though, what would you give up for him?
I mean, we have the 20th overall pick this year. You can't
look like 20.
Yeah. Well, he's got 2 years left on his rookie contract, plus a 5th-year option because he was a first-round pick.
No,
he's got 1 year.
He's got 1 year left.
And plus the 5th-year option.
Right.
Okay.
So you got to make the decision.
Yeah. Ooh, that might knock it down a little. I wouldn't give up a first for that then, because you'd have to make the decision this year if you're exercising the 5th-year option. Yeah, I like what Matt said, the 2nd and 4th.
Dark Storm.
Yeah.
Ham sandwich.
Yeah. Dark Storm. I don't know if we've had Dark Storm in the chat before. Welcome to the show. Glad you're joining us.
Yeah. Of course, it's in Chicago, so that would be like what a hot beef sandwich or something like that. Is that what kind of sandwich is in Chicago? I mean, look, people are going to talk about it until it doesn't happen. I'm really fascinated to see our approach at quarterback this year, because I think when you look at the AFC, I think Mike Tomlin has to know better than anybody. I can't win games with an average quarterback. My defense is not that good. This is not a Trent Dilfer year.
Here's what I'll say, though, right? Mason Rudolph gave us like better, slightly better than average play, right? Like his quarterback rating was what, 112 and above every game.
Is it fair to also include the opponents he played well against versus the opponents he didn't? Yeah, okay.
It is. But nevertheless, like, I think we saw this team is capable. If this team can get above average quarterback play or even average quarterback play,
right,
like they're capable of being a competitor. But we haven't gotten even average quarterback play.
And again, obviously I support Mason. I also think too that, and Tomlin said this today, I don't think anybody thought he was going to play that well. And I guarantee you that the teams that faced him were like, this dude is not going to beat us. And then he played well. But Ian, you're absolutely right. Like, we're so starved for like average quarterback play that we see Mason. And I mean, I'm dead serious when I say this. There are plenty of people that are like, oh no, Mason should start next year. And I'm like, no, like we can do better. It's the same. It's like it's not Stockholm syndrome, but maybe it is. But the amount of people that were like, oh man, Eric, or we need to get Eric Rowe back here. I'm like, Eric, row your boat. Death Row Records wasn't even on a squad. Like we were only like had to go to the well because we didn't have anybody else.
Yeah.
Like, we can do better. Like again, we want to talk about, we're the Steelers, and we want to talk shit to everybody else's, all the opposing fans. It's like, we could do better. We could do better than Mason Rudolph. We could do better than Eric Rowe. We could do better than Patrick Peterson. Let's get back to finding dudes like that are good football players that all come together, that all buy in, put the team first. I still think that is a couple years away, but Justin Fields automatically makes this team so much better, and it makes them a threat. And I don't know, like but then again, 2 months ago, people were saying that Kenny Pickett is better than Justin Fields.
Well, so that's silly. What? I forgot what I was going to say there. Alcohol's kicking in now. Something like that.
But I mean, honestly, if you want the team to be competitive, the worst case scenario for next year is that they go in with Kenny and Mason and like maybe a 3rd or 4th round draft pick, and are like, oh yeah, this will be fine, we'll figure it out. And then that's not a good scenario to be competitive in 2024.
Right.
But
exactly. Sorry,
but that's a good scenario to get a high draft pick in 2025 and be competitive long term after that. So I don't know. It's tough. I mean, and we said this on the show from the beginning of the year, though, like the worst possible thing they could do is bring back Matt Canada, because this year would be a lost year. And then they did it, and this year was a lost year.
Yep.
And now we got to go hire a new offensive coordinator. And because we're hiring a new offensive coordinator, they got to give Kenny another chance. So we're not in the quarterback market this year. And it's just,
yes. I want to move on to just discuss
that's in-depth analysis. That's a technical term. Blah is an industry term. Yes,
and like John Madden, the boom here, the boom there.
Yeah.
Here's a guy got his contacts in; he can see better.
The 4 divisional round games this weekend. I don't know what our records were last week.
Oh, terrible.
I know I didn't do well. I know that much, but anyway, in the NFC, you have the Packers at Niners. I love the Packers approach. They're young and they don't give a shit. They're just going out and playing right now and seeing where things go. I still think the Niners win that game. What do you guys think?
There's a potential for a Bay of Pigs NFC Championship game, which is kind of cool. But
we've had that one time, haven't we? Tampa Bay, Green Bay?
I'm not sure. Did we?
I thought we had it
Trying
once. Maybe not.
Now you've got me thinking about the NFC Championship games. I'm not sure. At any
rate,
it
was during the Warren Sapp times.
Was it? Because it was when Dungy coached the Bucs.
Yeah, something like maybe. I could be wrong.
Would have been 2002 because that was the year the Bucs went to the Super Bowl, right?
So they played anyway, go ahead, Ian. I'm sorry.
All right. At any rate, no, San Francisco. Home teams have done very well in the playoffs. Only one home team has lost so far, which was Dallas, which was hilarious. But San Francisco's losses this year all came when they were not at full strength, and they are pretty much at full strength here in the playoffs. And they're really good and really, really fun to watch, as much as I hate to admit it, because they have 5 Super Bowls, and if they win another one, they'll be tied with us. But they're really fun to watch, and they're schematically they're really good. So yeah, I think San Francisco wins this one. But this is kind of cool that, like, as someone who was born in the 80s and grew up watching football in the 90s, there was a lot of like Packers, Cowboys, 49ers, Packers, 49ers, Cowboys playoff games. So this is kind of like a throwback to my youth of like, we got the Packers Cowboys game. Now we get a Packers 49ers game. This is fun. So I like it. I like the matchup. But I think the 49ers are the better team.
Okay.
Scarf? Yeah. Ian, you're totally right. I can hear Pat Summerall's voice already in my head. I'm on green with the to the 20, to the 25. That's a terrible. R.I.P. Pat Summerall. Oh. Sorry, I butchered that. But I still like the 49ers, but I think this is going to be a low-scoring game, like 20-17. I think it's going to be very close. I think the Packers. You're right. They give zeros. I think that their defense is playing well. And I know Frisco's a really good team, but I always believe in the rust. Not to believe in the rust, but I think Frisco wins like 20-17.
Okay. The other NFC game, of course, is the Lions hosting the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Who, by the way, are playing indoors in Detroit. What? That poor lady. Jesus, that poor lady was set up. In any case, let's not forget that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers got into the postseason with a 9-0 win over Carolina. As good as they looked against Philly, I think Philly was basically already had the golf clubs and the beachwear packed away. Give me the Lions in this one. Ian?
It would be pretty awesome to see like a Lions-Bills Super Bowl. That would be
unbelievable.
Like if you follow like the Sickos committee on Twitter, that's the ultimate Sickos matchup. Is like Houston and Detroit would be the ultimate Sickos matchup. But the Lions, I mean, man, I love what Dan Campbell's done with that team. And, when you look at head coaches right now in the league, you either have head coaches that are the successful head coaches are either ones who are offensive schematic geniuses or are like culture guys, and like Dan Campbell and actually D'Amico Ryans in Houston, like they're those culture guys, right? They completely came in and just changed the culture of the organization. Like everything you see about what Campbell's done in Detroit is just, completely changed the way that team operates. And Detroit's super fun to watch. And I said this last week on the show because I picked Philadelphia, that I can't bring myself to pick Baker Mayfield to win anything. So that said, if the Steelers somehow signed him, he would immediately become the best quarterback on the roster.
Oh, yeah.
But nevertheless, I'm going to go with the Lions at home.
Okay. Scarps, what do you got?
If the Lions were going to lose in one of these 2 weeks, it was going to be last week.
I thought so too.
I thought they weathered the storm. Matthew Stafford threw for like almost 400 yards, but they weathered the storm. They handled their emotions well, and it's like the Lions are pretty much like who we want to be, right? We want to run the ball. We want to have explosive plays on offense, and then their defense isn't the best, but it bends.
Yes,
it doesn't break.
It does bend.
I think Baker Mayfield played himself into a contract with Tampa Bay, but I do think the Eagles didn't give a shit about that game, and I think the Lions are riding that wave, and I think the Lions are going to win by like 2 scores. I think it's a big moment for them.
I wouldn't be surprised either. AFC, let's talk Houston, Baltimore first. I really, really, really want to take the Texans here. I think the rust thing, especially with guys like Lamar, who didn't even play against us. So what's it been, 3 weeks? I don't know. Baltimore just seems too good. I'm going to go with Baltimore in a close one there. Ian?
So Mike Tomlin hasn't won a playoff game in 7 years. But did you know that John Harbaugh is 1-4 in the last 8 years in the playoffs?
That's true.
The Ravens just like find ways to choke in the playoffs. And they've got a really good roster. But you talk about Green Bay like giving 0 fucks. Like Houston gives less than 0 fucks. Like Houston just goes out and they're like, we're gonna air it out and we'll see if you can stop us. Houston is so much fun to watch.
They are.
And the attitude they play with on defense and just flying to the ball, and their willingness to air it out on offense. Now, like CJ Stroud he's a rookie, he could get completely overwhelmed by the Ravens defense. They do a lot of pressures, a lot of unique looks, a lot of things like that.
Agreed.
I could definitely see Baltimore winning this game, but it would be a lot of fun if Houston won too. But I think at the end of the day, Houston's had some issues at kicker this year, and while Justin Tucker has missed a few, if it comes down to it, he's kicking it home in the playoffs, and I think Baltimore edges this one out.
It's hard to go against that dude, man.
Yeah.
Scarps?
Yeah, Baltimore is going to stop the run. I don't know if I told you guys this, but like, man, if Tank Dell didn't get hurt, and obviously Noah Brown's on IR too. So besides Nico Collins, they do have Dalton Schultz, but like, and Robert Woods, who hasn't really been a guy in a while. I think CJ Stroud is a superstar in the making, but I think the Ravens are going to run the ball, and the Browns had pretty good success running the ball last week. The Ravens are going to run the ball. I think they'll be rusty as well, but I'm thinking 20-17, Justin Tucker type of walk off. Same as the other one. I believe in the rust, but as much as I don't like the Ravens, they do have a really good roster. And is it Mike McDonald? Yes. There's Mike McDonald's their D coordinator, right? Yes.
Yes.
But not to be confused with Michael McDonald. But or Mike McDaniel. Anyway, but I like the Ravens.
I was going to try and do a Michael McDonald impersonation, but I couldn't get it out. Yeah. And the last one, of course, is the Bills hosting the Chiefs. Allen is impressive. I got a feeling that this is Mahomes' first time on the road. Yes, he's played in Super Bowls, which is important, but he's never been in a playoff game away from home before. I like the Bills in this one by a touchdown. Ian?
I don't know if I'd go by a touchdown, but I think the Bills took some injuries last week against us.
Yes, they did.
Gabe Davis could be back this week. They got some other guys who could be back. So, this one feels like a close game that gets settled at the end. I would love to see the Bills beat the Chiefs, just because I'm kind of tired of seeing the Chiefs win.
Same.
And yeah, it would be. I know the Bills beat us, but I think I said last week on the show that the Bills felt like a team that could either lose in the first round or go all the way, and they didn't lose in the first round, so I probably am going to pick them to go all the way at this point. I like what the Bills are doing on both sides of the ball, and I think playing at home definitely makes a big difference in front of that crowd of just absolute insanity. So the other thing I'll say is the Chiefs this year, and you brought it up earlier when we talked about Eric Bieniemy, but they've done this weird thing where like they forget how to play football in the second half of games.
Yeah.
Like they'll look so schematically dominant and so unstoppable in the first half. And then the second half, they'll just like forget how to play football and not score.
Yep.
And so, I think Buffalo has been better at making adjustments this year. You even go back to the week 18 game against the Dolphins, where the Dolphins were running like 2 plays on offense, and then Buffalo figured that out at halftime and decided to stop them. And then Miami went like 3 and out every possession in the second half. So I like the Bills in this one, but it's going to be close.
Yeah. The other thing I would say related to that too is just that Taylor Swift, might lose. And that would be just awful.
What a shame.
Yeah. Scarps, what do you got now?
I have the Bills, and I have them large.
Whoa!
And I cannot wait. I said this. The Bills was the worst draw we could have had, and if we went to Miami, I think we might have won that game.
I agree.
And if we went to Kansas City, I know we would have given them a better shot than the Dolphins did. The Bills are they're rolling. They've been rolling. And I don't want to say it's kind of – I don't want to compare them to the 05 Steelers.
Boy, it's funny. I was going to do that too.
But remember the 05 Steelers were 7-5. They won 4 in a row. Then they won 4 more. Bills were 6-6. They've won 6 in a row.
Yep.
And they're just feeling – and this is Mahomes' first road game. I think Josh Allen's gonna look at gonna watch The Last Dance, and he's gonna take it personally like Michael Jordan did. And Josh Allen is going to. I'm talking like game. You're gonna remember Josh Allen, this game from him forever. He is going to fucking destroy this team, and I can't wait. I cannot wait, and I cannot wait to hear the national people say that Travis Kelce was distracted by Taylor Swift, that Mahomes lost his touch. Is this the end of Patrick Mahomes? I don't care. I got the Bills 34-16.
I'll do the best I can out there, but Travis was distracted by Taylor. And
that's a good Kermit.
Kermit the Frog. He does. He really sounds like him. Yeah.
I'm here. You ever see that one where he's yelling?
I'm here all day, Crosby.
I'm here.
All right. Is Casey Kasem out of the grave and available tonight?
Yeah, he is. Oh, goodness gracious. Casey's coast to coast. Jamie, I got the Bills by at least 2 scores. Casey's coast to coast. American Top 40. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the week that was January 18th. 1978. Our favorite correspondent, Ryan, is back again with us this week, and he writes, Dear Casey, Picketologist Tomlin apologists, flooding my timeline like Katrina did to New Orleans. Here's the reason no losing seasons and QB1 status got me sneezing and wheezing. 5 straight playoff losses, but my bosses ain't tossing me out the building like they did to Rick Ross's. Ifs and shouldas don't pay the bills, but I could have had me some postseason stacks if our defense would have remembered that they weren't on the sofa. I'm Mr. Lova Lova. Casey, that's not a parody. That's an original from yours truly. I'm feeling this flow. Hate me because they ate me. Tears, no fears. I've got bars, Casey. I'm stunting like my Kenny. I'm sure you've heard the news by now that Kenny Pickett is going to be QB1 heading into 2024. Mike Tomlin confirmed this earlier today at his season-ending press conference. Casey, Tomlin was smiling like a head coach who just got a contract extension, despite being 3-9 in his last 12 postseason games. As he put it, he isn't job scared. Damn, Mike, that's cold as hell, just like your defenses in the last 5 playoff games. While Tomlin did say Pickett would be QB1, he repeatedly said that there would be competition and that we don't anoint anyone. Mike then read his favorite word salad from the book of Tomlin. Let he who hath understand that the thoughtfully non-rhythmic shall, quite frankly, understand the minutia associated with years of playoff disappointment, obviously. In which the Picketologist replied, praise to you, Lord Kenneth Shane Pickett. Tomlin also complimented Mason repeatedly and even said they were interested in doing business with him. Sounds to me like they want Mason back. Regardless, you cannot go into the season with Kenny and Mason fighting for QB1. We've already seen the battle of mid, and it's literally a non-losing season and a first-round exit. They absolutely need to upgrade the QB spot. It's like they don't understand that you need a QB to compete. Casey, I go crazy when I think about this team. Well, Ryan, keep your feet on the ground and keep reaching for the stars. Up 2 spots to number 19 this week. Here's Paul Davis off his album Singer of Songs, Teller of Tales with I Go Crazy.
Paul Davis.
Wow.
I swear to God, I wouldn't have guessed that in like a million years.
I rap better than Le'Veon Bell. And I rapped in a Casey Kasem impression. This is
right. So that's saying something right there. Wow. Little Paul Davis. Didn't Paul Davis also do Cool Nights?
It's gonna be a cool
night. I think that was him too.
Yes,
yeah.
It was.
Thanks so much for everybody joining us tonight. It is the off season, but we'll be here every week because
I hate myself.
We have nothing better to do. Hopefully Ben will be back, and who knows. But thanks for everybody for being here. Check out the website, stillcityblitz.com. Check us out on our socials and all that other good stuff. And I guess, Ian, you're going to have to take the Ben role tonight.
Oh, I guess I am.
And hey, don't forget, kids, go Steelers.
And the Ravens suck. And I love